Aloha. Welcome to the Mr.G podcast. This is episode number 40. Today is June 25th, 2023. I'm coming to you from the outskirts of Chinatown in Honolulu, Hawaii, where it's a sizzling, sweaty 80 degrees here at just about 8 a.m. in the morning. I'm coming to you from my ghetto apartment building. It's actually pretty decent on the inside. The worst thing about it is I have some neighbors that have been completely obsessed with me, straight up harassing me for like 3 or 4 years. Just today before recording, they heard my fans go off. So they turn up their music and they start standing outside. And if they see one of my cats, they start sneezing. These are all one-bedroom apartments. The lady that's sneezing doesn't speak a word of English, thinks she's entitled, has 5 people living in a one-bedroom apartment, and she's sneezing. Yo, lady, I live 2 floors up. If you're sneezing, has nothing to do with my cats. It's because you're sharing a one-bedroom apartment and a one-bathroom with 5 people. That doesn't normally happen in the United States. Newsflash, lady, you're in the United States. You're living in a one-bedroom. There's no getting around that. You look bad. You collect cans. You raise chickens. You sing outside a strange man's window. You encourage your kids to yell at strange man's window. You even have them walk halfway up the stairs to scream when you think I'm recording. It's learned behavior. The kids yell up at my window too because they've seen their horrible mother do it. I'm surprised nobody's fucking called on them and shit. But hey, leave me alone, lady. You're losing. You look horrible, like literally and figuratively. Today's episode is about okay, now that we got that out of the way, now that I got that off my chest, today's episode is about a $450 million painting and a $450 million yacht. Which would you have? Because the most expensive painting in the world was recently sold to Mohammed bin Salman. Now, you may not know the name, but you know the face. This guy is everywhere. He's one of the faces of the world. And give it to him. He's a very handsome man. He's very striking. You know when he walks into the room. And he's lived a very privileged life. In today's monologue, today's essay, I wrote about people that have $1 million and people that have $1 billion and how their mindset is different and how their lives are you might think that they live these fascinating, interesting lives. But if you ever talk to somebody that was raised by money and you have them tell them a story, have them tell you a story or anything, you realize that they're some of the dullest, most boring people you could ever meet in the world. And that's because what creates character? Experience creates character. Hardship creates character. You know, the most boring people in the world are the ones that haven't gone through shit. And if they have billions of dollars, they have to invent ways to spend money. Even if you have just $1 billion, it's so much more than $1 million. 1 billion is 1,000 million dollars. So if you have $1 billion, you can give 1,000 people $1 million each. If I had $1 billion, I could give everybody in this neighborhood $1 million. Somebody like Zuckerberg has 100 million, I believe, so he could give everybody $100 million or $10 million. But the thing is, even if you have $1 billion, and let's say you wanted to spend that whole billion in your lifetime, you would have to spend $35,250 every single day for 80 years just to get through a billion. Can you spend $35,000 a day every day for 80 years? Well, maybe the first few days, I could buy a car, buy a house, go to a nice dinner, but $35,000 every single day. And that's just if you have 1 billion. So Zuckerberg has 100 billion. So he would have to spend to get through Zuckerberg's money $350,000 every day for 80 years just to get through it. Somebody like Elon Musk. I like Elon Musk. He's the only billionaire that I like. He has $200 million. He would have to spend twice as much as Zuckerberg every day. So what did I say for Zuckerberg? It was something like $300,000 per day to get through his money. Somebody like Elon, $350,000, he would have to spend $700,000 every single day for 80 years to get through all the money that he has. It's preposterous. Nobody should have that much money. And when you break it down, like the Prince Mohammed bin Salman, who we're going to talk about today, he not only bought a $450 yacht, he also bought a $450 painting to go in the yacht. Leonardo da Vinci painting that was recently discovered. And this painting, um, it was originally sold in 1958 in England for $45, for 45 pounds. And then it somehow made its way to the United States. And in 2005, it was sold at a estate sale for $1,200. Okay. And at this time, nobody was sure it was painted by Leonardo da Vinci. It was extremely damaged and it had to be restored. So the last person that purchased it in 2005, she paid $1,200 and she had it restored. The person that was doing the restoration uh, claimed that it was so good, the painting was so perfect that and so authentic that it had to be done by Leonardo da Vinci. So they labeled it, official Da Vinci. Then recently, the painting called Salvator Mundi was sold at Christie's for a record $450 million. It was 400 million on auction, then it went up to $450 million for a painting. And this woman just in 2005 paid $1,200 for it. That's probably the best come up buy, sell in the history of sales, right? She paid $1,200 and she sells it for 450 freaking million dollars. But like I said, people that have that kind of money, $450 million, that's half a billion. Like I said, if you have 1 billion, you can spend 35,000 every single day for 80 years. So $450, let's just say half a billion, just for math's sake. So what's half of 35,000? Let's just say 18,000. So if you own that painting, you can sell that painting, and that painting is worth enough that you can spend $18,000 every single day for 80 years. I don't know if I've ever spent $18,000 in my life, but if you listen to today's monologue, there's a reason for that. There's a reason I've spent a life impoverished. There's a reason that I've gone through what I've gone through. I wouldn't have made it to this apartment, to this ghetto apartment. I would have never met these street cats if I did not live this life that I've lived. Everything that I've done, every decision that I've made, every road that I've turned, every corner that I went down, every choice that I've ever made has led me to this position. And if one thing was off, if I didn't take this job, or if I did take this job, or if I walked down this way instead of this way, things could have ended up different. And the butterfly effect, it's a fact of nature. A butterfly flaps its wings in the Atlantic Ocean, and it causes a hurricane in the Indian Ocean. We don't exactly know why, but we know that everything is connected. And I'm very appreciative. I was willing to go through that life of poverty to get me to this place to help these cats. Because if I hadn't made it here, these cats would still be here. They would just be much more hungry and they would have much more harder lives. So, it's cliche to say everything happens for a reason, but I can see the reason that I did what I did to lead me here. And I love these guys, these cats, and I love taking care of them every day. And it's going to be the best feeling. It's going to be so awesome when I finally get my farm and get my piece of land and move all the little buggas out there, let them climb trees, let them run through grass. And it's going to be really awesome. I talk about it in today's essay. So as far as the painting goes, the majority of the people that you ask, would you rather have a $400 painting or a $400 yacht? Now I'm thinking, is this a trick question? Like, who the hell would choose the painting, but they're the same price? It's just most people have the mindset they're trying to survive. They want to, most people uh, in America, at least 60, 70%, they could not afford an unexpected $500 expense. The majority of people live paycheck to paycheck, and the majority of the people are just a few paychecks from being those people camping out on the street. All right. So you don't want to judge people like that, but it's just preposterous the amount of money. Like, I don't know who would choose the artwork. Um, I'm dating a woman who's an artist, and she lives in Manchester, England. She's very attractive and very talented artist. And my twin brother is also an artist, a painter, and they paint. They've spent hours, years of their lives working on their craft. So maybe they could understand a painting being sold for 450 million a little better than I can. But even somebody that appreciates art, even an artist in itself, who's going to choose the painting over the yacht? You can't live in the painting. You can't eat off the painting. I suppose you could. But if you have a $450 million painting, you're not going to be carrying it around everywhere you go. You know, you're not going to be you're never going to be living on the streets carrying around this painting. I'm saving this painting. It's worth something. No, you're going to take care of your basic needs, the hierarchy of basic needs. You're going to need to take care of that first. And most people on this planet don't have that taken care of. We don't now more than ever, even with the algorithm and TikTok too, they just feed you whatever they want to feed you. And nobody goes and seeks out information. Very rarely people like go to somebody's page or go to a website. When's the last time you visited somebody's personal website? Do they even have websites anymore? I haven't heard from GoDaddy commercials in a while. Looks like they're taking this Super Bowl off because nobody makes their own website anymore. And we're all controlled. Everybody was obsessed by that submarine story. And even I was, knowing that it was a facade, just to, you know, a distraction. And I heard Barack Obama on a video yesterday. He was the first one that mentioned it, and I hadn't even heard of it. But a boat capsized at the same time everybody's, you know, praying for the billionaires in the submarine, the 5 billionaires in the submarine. At the same time, 700 migrants that were, I believe, in the Mediterranean, somewhere around the coast of Italy, lost their lives in a boat. And there's very little mention of that, but every story is submarine, submarine. And I get it, it's juicy. I've asked this question before. What's the obsession with the Titanic? People get so obsessed with the Titanic. I read today that the guy that built the submarine, he was obsessed with the Titanic. He wasn't just some like salesman with a strange name. He actually married a relative that was related to somebody that had died on the Titanic. And many people just have this obsession with the Titanic. I believe the billionaire, he was supposedly obsessed with the Titanic, and he convinced his 19-year-old son to come with him, even though the 19-year-old son was hesitant and didn't really want to go. I was wondering about that too. I'm like, hey kid, why are you even going to take that risk? You know, and then I thought, well, maybe he's really into the Titanic and he really wants to be one of those people, but he was just following his dad. And I guess they died on Father's Day. So on Sunday, the Coast Guard was aware that the sub had imploded on Sunday. They just didn't inform the public until Wednesday or Thursday when the oxygen ran out. They used it to their advantage so they could milk the situation. So put it in the comments. What would you take? Would you take a $400 million yacht, or would you take a $400 million painting? I know I've varied on the price. It's between 400 and 500 million. The yacht was originally owned by a Russian billionaire, and he paid 400 million. I believe the prince, you know, paid 450 million. It's the most expensive yacht in the world, if I'm not correct. If not, it's in the top 10 most expensive yachts in the world. So on this yacht is not only the most expensive yacht in the world needs the most expensive painting in the world, right? You're not going to have some cheap piece of crap on there. You're going to have the most expensive painting. Leonardo's masterpiece, Salvator Mundi, which is a portrait of Jesus Christ, if I'm not mistaken. But according to Business Weekly, the world's most expensive artwork, Leonardo da Vinci's masterpiece, Salvator Mundi, has reportedly been installed on Saudi Crown Prince's super yacht. The location of the painting has been a mystery since it was sold for a record $450 million at auction by Christie's in New York in 2017. On Monday, ArtNet, an art industry news service, reported that the 500-year-old painting was being kept on Prince Mohammed's yacht named Serene. Arnett said two principals involved in the transaction has told its reporter that the work has whisked away in the middle of the night on NBC's plane and relocated to his yacht, the Serene. Imagine that yacht like floating in the ocean. The yacht's worth 400 million, but there's a painting on there worth 450 million. I can just see like Tom Cruise Mission Impossible style, just like going on the yacht, dun, 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 like trying to get that painting. That would be a great scene. Like climbing on the yacht with like cords and stuff, like scaling the side of the yacht, and then the prince has all this like security team. That's like, it's like something from a movie, like a good Indiana Jones movie. The last two Indiana Jones movies, not good. They fucked up that franchise. But according to Newsweek, the Salvator Mundi, Latin for savior of the world. Okay. Yeah. Mundi comes from Latin for world, and Salvator, savior. So savior of the world in Latin which has been at the center of a storm of controversy over suggestions that it was painted by one of Leonardo's assistants and not the man himself. It had been in display at a Middle East outpost at the Paris's Louvre, I don't even know how to pronounce that, gallery. At the Louvre, it's pronounced the Louvre, at the Paris's Louvre gallery last September. Having spent so long undiscovered, this masterpiece is now our gift to the world. We look forward to welcoming people from near and far to witness its beauty. However, just weeks before the scheduled unveiling on September 18th, the opening was postponed and had not been rescheduled. The Saudi embassies in London and Washington did not respond to requests for comment on the painting's whereabouts. A spokesman for Christie's did not comment on the location of the painting or its provenance. Earlier this month, one of the world's leading experts on Leonardo criticized Christie's for wrongly suggesting of the Salvador Mundi that scholars had attributed the picture to the Renaissance master, Dr. Carmen Baumbach, a curator at the Met in New York. So it's not even 100% that it was done by Leonardo da Vinci, and it's the most expensive painting in the world. It could have been done by his assistant. The identity of the buyer remained a secret following the auction until the New York Times disclosed that it had been bought by Saudi royal Prince Badr bin Al Abaham, which is a relative of the Prince Mohammed bin Salman. The Guardian has previously reported in growing billions, and he has a relative that collects that has lots of artwork. I've read about him before. The British-born Lewis, who has an estimated 3.9 billion fortune, owns a majority stake in Tottenham Football, go Spurs, and lives in the tax-free Bahamas. He has what he describes as one of the largest private art collections in the world, including paintings by Degas, Freud, Klimt, Modigliani, Matisse, and Picasso. Also sculptures by Moore, Degas, did Modica, and it's not known which ones are on his yacht. Yeah, so I don't see what are you going to get from a $450 million painting? It's kind of like, what are you going to get from going to the bottom of the ocean and paying $250,000 to look at some ship wreckage on a screen? The submarine that was at the bottom of the ocean, they had a little window in the bathroom, but most of it was on a screen. And you try to think what happened, and like their last moments, everybody says, oh, it was just like that, they didn't notice anything. But I saw a few interviews with the filmmaker from the movie The Titanic, James Cameron, and he was saying that they probably did have some notice, and even before they went down. But you look at all the money, there was $1 million to be made that the people were paying to go down there. Why are you doing that? Just for ego? It's on a screen. He could have just went down 10 feet into the ocean and played a video of the Titanic wreckage. What's the difference? You're going to see it on a screen anyways. The difference is you can say, I'm one of the only people that have been down there to see it with my own eyes. Bro, you didn't even see it with your own eyes. You saw it on a screen. Like, and pride comes before the fall. Like I said, I don't feel bad for those billionaires at all. I feel bad for the 19-year-old son. In times like that, when your life is in jeopardy, you want to listen to your gut, because there's some things your unconscious mind has picked up on that you may not consciously be thinking about, and that's where the gut instinct comes from. If you're if you sense something's wrong and you feel that in your gut, then your subconscious mind picked up on a noise, a conversation, a bad person that you didn't register with your conscious mind. And that's the reason that we have that gut feeling. It's in our DNA from thousands of years of evolution. It's similar to when people think that they have, when you think that you've been at a place before, deja vu. Deja vu, it's also similar to the conscious mind. Deja vu doesn't exist in a metaphorical sense. It's a trick that your brain plays on you. Deja vu, you may walk into a room and you look at a painting, and we're talking about paintings, right? Just using an example. You walk into a room and you see a painting on the wall, and somebody's like, oh yeah, And then you have a feeling of deja vu. I've seen that painting before. I know that I've seen that painting before, but I can't figure out where. And maybe sometime when you were 10 years old, you were at your friend's house and they had the same painting on the wall, and you never really looked at it or spoke about it or talked about it, but it was just there in the corner of your eye, and your subconscious picked up on it. And so later on, 10, 20 years later, you see that painting and you're like, whoa, I've seen that before. And you just didn't register it in your conscious mind. So we'll talk a little bit about Mohammed bin Salman. That's the handsome prince of Saudi Arabia. He's basically the de facto ruler of Saudi Arabia, and he's the seventh son of King Salman, but he's the firstborn child of the King Salomon's third wife. So he received his law degree at King Saud University, and Mohammed runs an authoritarian government. There's no democratic institutions in Saudi Arabia, and repression is widespread. Islamic scholars, human rights activists, women's rights activists, journalists, former insider Islamists, and other political dissidents are systematically repressed through tactics of torture and jailing. That's one thing that's kind of like, what the fuck? Like, you see all these world leaders, being buddy with Prince Solomon, like he's the greatest guy in the world. Donald Trump, when he became head of Saudi Arabia, Donald Trump tweeted out, we put our guy at the top, before he deleted it or something. And I'm not saying bad things about, Prince Mohammed. Believe me, I will be respectful. However, there are many instances, questionable activities of torture and murder directly that comes from him, as well as women's rights and human rights as well. Women weren't legally allowed to drive in Saudi Arabia until 2017. I'm going to pause for, there's a personal story. Have you ever known anybody from Saudi Arabia? Are you listening to me right now? Have you ever met somebody from Saudi Arabia? Well, I can tell you, I have known somebody from Saudi Arabia, and he was actually royalty. He was someone in this family, and I met him in Austin, Texas, while I was a student at the University of Texas. There was another school near the UT campus called the International School. It's where I met my friend Moritz as well. And I would take a bus, a city bus that wasn't very common. It like went along the outskirts of Austin. It was a more scenic route down Shoal Creek and South Lamar. It's the number 338 in Austin. And all the major buses that go from University of Texas, like the number 1 and all those, they're like cram packed with people. But these buses near the International School, they were like more open, and I could sit there and not be bothered. It was a longer bus ride, but it was worth it to me. So every day after school, I would walk from the campus to this other bus stop, and it was near the International School. Now, international students, no matter how much money they come from, like the Saudi Arabian guy that I met, they can't drive in the United States usually. So, and this was before Uber. And so a lot of international students would take this bus to, there was like an international dormitory or something like that. And they would take this bus to there. And so that's where, at this bus stop, is where I met a friend of mine, Moritz from Germany. But also I met a Saudi Arabian prince. And he was really nice, and we would talk for a few hours, and I would tell him, like, isn't women aren't allowed to drive there? He's like, no, it's okay, it's okay. And I'd bring up some of these things I've heard about Saudi Arabia, and he just dismissed it. But he was extremely likable, and he reminds me of lots of this guy Mohammed bin Salman, because like I would go over like different human rights things, and he would just blow off, and he just made me like him and trust him a lot. And I was living in a house in South Austin, not far from the International School, and I invited both Moritz and the Saudi Arabian prince to my house. It was a nice upper middle class house, and Moritz came over a few times, but the prince was like hesitant, and I was kind of like, what, like, well, you're a prince, you can't hang out with a peasant like me. But like when we're on the bus, the three of us, we would take the bus every day, and I'd be the entertaining one because their English was limited. But it worked out perfect when I'm good at playing that part. of the talkative joke cracker to make somebody feel more comfortable. But he wanted to come, like we were just gonna hang out, and also I had acid too. I ended up tripping acid with Moritz. But the Saudi Arabian prince wouldn't take any acid. I'm like, come on, man, everybody's doing it. You scared of a little LSD? No, but yeah, the Saudi prince wouldn't take acid with us, so it was just me and Moritz tripping acid. There's actually a video of me and Moritz playing blackjack. I was a blackjack dealer in Austin during this time, so every weekend I'd put on a fake bow tie, and I'd go to I worked for a company where they put on parties all around Austin, usually around University of Texas and 6th Street, where they would have a casino set up. And I was a great blackjack dealer. Blackjack is a really fun game, and a lot of women play blackjack, so they generally like me. And it was just really fun. They had me on as a poker dealer first, but poker's like entirely male, serious. Everybody's sitting, poker. There's all these rules like burn one, turn one. Everybody's like, no. Like I would always misdeal as a poker dealer, and like it's not where you crack jokes. The poker dealers, and so they moved me to blackjack, and that's where I stayed for years because I would get tipped every night, and I just like I'd always intentionally bust. They were playing for prizes, so it wasn't like big time stakes. There wasn't a casino boss, but it was really great, and I really enjoyed it. Who wouldn't? All the women were nicely dressed. It was usually like office parties, and everybody's in their nice attire, and perfect occasion to show them a good time. However, so I was working at that time. I don't know why I just started talking about that, because I remember the night that I was hanging out with Moritz, I got off from a casino gig and I still had my bow tie on. But the prince that we met, he never would hang out with us. But I remember some of the conversations we had, and I told him like, so there's so much money in Saudi Arabia, everybody's rich. He's like, just about everybody's rich, and gas is really cheap there because this is when gas was expensive. And he's like, oh yeah, everybody drives, and gas is very expensive. Then I'm like, everybody drives? I'm like, what about me? Would I be able to drive? And he's like, yes, even you, Greg, even you. And I know he remembers me too. He probably didn't meet many people in the United States the summer that he was here, the prince that I met. And I know I left some sort of impression on him. And that's important. You always want to leave a good impression on people that visit your country. I feel the same way in Hawaii. When I see tourists, you want to leave a good impression, and you want to set a good example. So let's talk about Mohammed bin Salman. One of the main things that he did was really bad in 2017. Let's see if I can find it. He like rounded up like 200 Saudi businessmen, and he took them to like this fancy hotel and like tortured them. Okay, yeah, it's called the 2017 Purge. In 2017, he took 200 wealthy businessmen and princes to be placed under house arrest at the Ritz-Carlton. Imagine being under house arrest at the Ritz-Carlton. The Saudi press announced the arrest of different Saudi princes and billionaires, including an owner of Twitter, on corruption and money laundering charges. Those arrested at the Ritz-Carlton were the subject of what became the night of beating. Most were beaten, and some were tied to walls in stress positions as part of torture by Saudi agents. The human rights is really hard there. During the proceedings, there was no due process nor plea bargains, and U.S. officials described the action as coercion, abuse, and torture. Detainees were denied sleeps and had their heads covered and were beaten. 17 had to be hospitalized. So imagine being a wealthy Saudi billionaire, and all of a sudden you're taken from your home, you're in house arrest at the Ritz-Carlton, and you're beaten and tortured. Ideology. Mohammed's ideology has been described as a nationalist and a populist, with a conservative attitude toward politics and a liberal stance on economic and social issues. It's kind of hard. Like they're trying to open up Saudi Arabia to tourism, and they have that new project, the line, which they have the money apparently, but Mohammed's net worth is listed at only 3 billion. And just from hearing that he has bought that $450 million yacht and a $450 million painting, he has more than 3 billion guaranteed. He's not, if he has only $3 billion, that painting would be 1/6 of his entire wealth. He's not spending 1/6 of his entire wealth on a painting that may not even be done by Da Vinci. And if they find out it was not done by the Da Vinci, I'm pretty sure it's going to lose its value from 450 million. But the thing is, Mohammed, he's the spokesperson for Saudi Arabia, and he's been all around the world meeting politicians and famous people. In June 2016, he traveled to Silicon Valley and met people in the tech industry, including Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg. In 2018, he met with business people and Hollywood stars, including President Trump, Bill and Hillary Clinton, Henry Kissinger, Michael Bloomberg, George W. Bush, George H.W. Bush, Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, Oprah Winfrey, Rupert Murdoch, Richard Branson. Jeff Bezos, I'm surprised that he met with Jeff Bezos because he was also accused of tampering with Jeff Bezos' phone, or he denied responsibility. Eric Garty, Los Angeles. He also met with Michael Douglas, Morgan Freeman, and Dwayne Johnson. Basically, he just met with anybody that he wanted. He's like, I like this guy. I like this guy. The Prince here, he's also a big owner in video games and Activision and a couple other. He's reported spent his childhood growing up playing video games. He was awarded an honorary doctorate from Katasarat University. An honorary doctorate. Wow, he must have worked hard for that. He came to power through it was somewhat of a coup, and like I said, there's not many human rights in Saudi Arabia. He has touted reforms in an effort to improve his government's image. This includes regulating restrictions of the power of the religious police and improving women's rights. He removed the ban on female drivers in 2018 and weakened the male guardianship system in 2019. The first Saudi public concerts by a female singer, the first Saudi sports stadium to admit women. He increased the presence of women in the workforce, and he's opening the country to international tourists by introducing an e-visa system, allowing foreign visas to be applied for and issued via the internet. The Saudi 2030 program aims to diversify the economy through investment in non-oil sectors, including technology and tourism. Recently, he strengthened his relationship with China, signing a comprehensive strategic partnership with Xi in 2022. And in 2023, this year, they restored full diplomatic relations with Iran, which is a long time coming. The prince, he comes from a line of royalty. He was born in 1985 to Prince Salman and his third wife, Fada. So he's the seventh son of Mohammed bin Prince Salman, but he's the first and eldest among his mother, because the king had 3 different wives and apparently 7 sons. They don't mention anything of how many daughters. That's their MO there in Saudi Arabia. But the one thing that's really interesting that's been in the news is the line, which is supposed to, if when finished, will be the largest structure human beings have ever made. And it's we'll talk more about it tomorrow, but the line is something that's going to be built in Saudi Arabia, which is a long strip. I don't know. I haven't researched it yet, but I think it's something like 100 miles long. It goes all across the whole country. It's huge, and it's as tall as the Empire State Building. It's like if you put 100 Empire State Buildings next to each other, and then two stacks of Empire State Buildings next to each other, and I think that it's going to be a blueprint for other projects for coming generations. 100, 200 years from now, it's probably how everybody's going to be living, because the planet's going to be torn to shit. And I hope he is successful. It's going to be, and I hope it's completed in my lifetime as well. Saudi Arabia is a big player in the world. The United States power is dwindling. Russia is in civil war. So when you talk about superpowers in the future, you got to look at Nigeria, with their population explosion. They're going to be one of the strongest countries in the future, and more so Saudi Arabia and other countries in the Middle East, like Qatar and Qatar, and all those countries, all those damn countries over there, the camel guys. Saudi Arabia actually imports their camels from Australia because there's like a huge camel problem in Australia. Australia has more camels than anywhere else in the world. They have more wild camels too. And you don't ever want to be kicked by a camel or you lose your life. No, that's a donkey. You got to watch out for those donkeys. But hey, I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. Today was episode number 40. Join us tomorrow. We'll have episode number 41, where we'll talk more about Saudi Arabia, the Crown Prince, and as well as the Line project that they're building. So we'll get all into that. The Mr. G podcast is available wherever you listen to podcasts: Apple Podcasts, Audacity Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, all of those podcast sites. You just got to find it. Type into Google Mr. G Hawaii podcast or Mr. G Gregory Brandt podcast. Eventually you'll find it, and eventually I'll be moved to the top. If you can't find the audio version of the Mr. G podcast, full episodes are uploaded in their entirety on Twitter and YouTube. Thank you all for listening today. And for me and my street kitties, we say aloha.